Hey, and thanks again for joining us here at Brave Kenya TV, where we stand for progressive politics, good governance, and accountability. Now, the Gen Z revolution in Kenya has just received a fresh boost of energy from the most unlikely source, William Samoei Ruto. It was Friday morning when lawyer and senior counsel Ahmed Nasir, appearing on Spice FM, gave Ruto a friendly advice.
President Ruto has an excellent chance. I mean, his government was almost run out of town by these young people who demonstrated. And they had genuine grievances because they want a better Kenya. A Kenya that listens to them, that delivers to them, that does not steal from them. And I think the task of the president in the constitutional cabinet is to address that and give them competent, qualified Kenyans who are not thieves. This is a second opportunity. I mean, then if he doesn't get it right, then we will realize that the fundamental problem this country faces is the president himself.
But it only took a few hours, and Ruto came out to announce his first 11 nominees for the CS positions. Now, looking at it straight away, it was a straight reject from the Gen Z, because they had clearly given Ruto a demand of what they wanted in the next lineup of CSs. And they were very clear about it. They said, dissolve the cabinet, don't reshuffle. And they were not having any of this. Who are these names we are seeing on this list that you're trying to purport to be a new cabinet, a brand new, a fresh new cabinet? We are seeing the likes of Duale, the guy who deployed the military to the streets of Kenya. We are seeing the likes of Kindiki, who has presided over the killings of Kenyans, innocent Kenyans, who are exercising their democratic rights, and who has continually castigated and curtailed any form of protest. We saw the likes of Rebecca Miano, who has been accused as recently as this year of procurement fraud in the Ministry of Trade, and who Kenyans were quick to point out has not practiced law for the last 25 years. How can she be the chief legal advisor of the government? Now, at this point, Kenyans were actually really agitated at this president and the kind of gimmicks he was trying to play with them. Some were asking, is it that he doesn't understand what we want? Does he not get what you're trying to tell him? That we want cabinet secretaries who are people of utmost integrity with a proven track record. Looking across social media, I came across this gentleman who voiced it so well.
You cannot do such mistakes. Ati unatoa Machogu, unamwekea mtu wake wa mkono. Unatoa Mithika, unaweka personal assistant wake. Unatoa Murkomen, unaweka a worse choice than Murkomen, Chirchir. Mwenye amekuwa fired mpaka na kina Uhuru huko mbele, wewe Ruto ukakuja ukamtoa because of incompetence. Ameharibu mambo ya stima, angalia tokens kwenye zimefika. Sasa ndio umepeleka transport. I don't know nyinyi mnataka kuficha nini.
Exactly. That's what Kenyans were asking. Why is this president so hell-bent on returning the same faces to the same positions, especially in some critical ministries like the Ministry of Defense, Roads, Interior? He seems to be hung up on getting the same faces back in there. Now this Kenyan was having enough of it. Na kwani Ruto utoa wapi hawa watu corrupt haki? Do they have like a members club where they meet and register or something? And then this other Kenyan here was saying, kama hii ndio first 11, wale wako kwa bench, wanatolewa kamiti ama? These guys, some of them have actually had a proper serious brush with the law where lots of money has been lost by the country. And this was amplified by the Gen Z from Kitengela. Now, Kitengela has actually surprisingly emerged as one of the epicenter of this Gen Z movement. Every day there's a protest. Kitengela is the place to watch because they come out and they actually make business stop in Kitengela. Man, kudos to these guys. Listen to them.
On the recently nominated cabinet, once the cabinet was dismissed, there is no way back as per Chapter 6 of the Constitution. And the president must fire all those who have served in the first cabinet.
Political leaders were not left behind either in condemning Ruto's move, especially those who had participated in the second liberation of Kenya, like Martha Karua. She said that Ruto was confirming his impunity, and it was the clearest expression of contempt at his employer, who are the Kenyan people. So clearly charged up right there. And then Kabando was sort of at 100 already. Said Ruto's cabinet choices are beyond a fish rotten in the head. And he called upon Gen Zs and millennials and their parents to come out in the streets on Tuesday in large numbers. He says enough is enough. Ruto must go. And quick online polls were showing that majority of Kenyans were not happy with Ruto's cabinet nominees. Now, come Sunday, the church leaders were not being left behind as well in condemning this contempt on Kenyans. Here is Nakuru Bishop Cleophas Oseso.
Rais amezindua sehemu moja ya kabineti yake mawaziri, lakini kwa wengi hata kwetu tunaona kwamba ni cosmetic, yani kwamba watu wanatarajia mambo mapya, watu wanatarajia kuona sura mpya na wanatarajia Kenya mpya na mambo yafanyike kwa upya.
Yes, absolutely spot on. Kenyans are looking for a new start, a complete overhaul of governance in this country. And this was captured also by Tony Gashoka, who said William Ruto appointed a cabinet without understanding the fundamental reason why he had to dissolve it fast. I mean, literally, he comes up with a list that does not reflect that he understood what Kenyans actually want of him, of this cabinet. He seems to be the one that Willis Otieno had in mind when he was saying this.
The political class is completely out of touch with our reality. They are still applying the politics of yesteryears, whereas we're in a new age. And this new age, it's about the people's agenda. And there's nothing you are going to do and progress in this country before you attune your politics or your governance to be about the people's agenda.
Absolutely. It's about the people's agenda. We want people-centered politics, people-centered policies, people-centered appointments where you reflect that you have taken the views of the people on board and you're acting according to their needs. Now you can see clearly that Ruto's game plan is trying to go back and do what his predecessors did when they faced a similar situation. You know, he's trying to play from Uhuru's playbook and Kibaki's playbook by bringing in Raila on board and forming a government of national unity, what he's calling a broad-based coalition, a broad-based government. And from reports in the media on Thursday and Friday, it seemed that Raila had already struck a deal with Ruto, you know, to have 7 cabinet slots, and they were going to be named actually on that Friday when he named the other CSs, the 11 CSs. But he was facing a lot of resistance and friendly fire from his own people. He came out trying to justify his move to join government by saying, if we say Ruto must go, it means Gachagua will come in and continue implementing the bad policies. He also said, we might even have the military take over. And he said, joining government is not about propping up Ruto, supporting Ruto. It's about saving Kenya. Now, Kenyans did not buy this at all. And this was perfectly captured by Martha Karua, who was Raila's running mate in the 2022 elections.
Kenyans,
listen to her.
Through the GenZ, have actually passed a vote of no confidence in the entire executive. Anybody saying that Ruto must go means that his deputy takes over. That's mere propaganda.
And so by Friday, the lineup as presented in the media was that Raila's ODM was to get 4 slots in that cabinet. Joho was the nominee, Oparanya, Junet Mohammed, and surprise, surprise, this guy always seems to find a way to come back, Raphael Tuju. Kalonzo's wiper was to get 2 slots, Matungulu MP Stephen Mule and Kathiani MP Robert Mbui. Now the remaining 7th slot seemed to have been earmarked for DAP leader Eugene Wamalwa, or if said no, it was to be taken by Jeremiah Kioni of Jubilee Party. Now both Wamalwa and Kioni have been very categorical that they are not boarding.
We shall not participate in or support the proposed Kenya Kwanza-led broad-based government of national unity, because this is a betrayal of the Kenyan people, particularly Gen Z and millennials, who are paid the ultimate price to rid this country of the disastrous Kenya Kwanza regime.
So you can see that the majority of leaders in AZIMIO are not for this unity with President Ruto.
I'm urging everybody that joining Ruto is a disaster, is an abomination. It cannot work.
But it seems like the advice that Raila actually acted on was that from Mother Karua.
To my brother, Raila Odinga, you say you're saving not Ruto but the country. I will say to you too, then give a list of demands to set the environment for discussion. Let us hear you stand up for human rights the way you have stood for human rights before.
And so Saturday we saw a complete turnaround from Raila, talking about the voice of the people must be heard. Our peaceful protest continues. This is Raila of old coming back again. He said, I'm ready to forgo my AU ambitions for the sake of my country. And he gave a statement mainly targeted at the GenZ, but also to the government. He said, we must have compensation for every victim of police brutality, release of all abductees and those in jail, a prosecution of all security sector perpetrators who have facilitated atrocities on peaceful Kenyans. And he went on to say that we must have a convention, careful not to use the word dialogue. He said we must have a national convention bringing together youth, government, religious leaders, healthcare professionals, lawyers, and teachers, where we can discuss about good governance, the skyrocketing cost of living, eradicating tribalism, fighting corruption, and debt and fiscal management. And so the newspapers carried it, saying that Raila had made an about turn prompted by what they called a former leader who did not see eye to eye with President Ruto. Now, this was clarified by Robert Alai, who accused Uhuru of attempting to influence ODM leader Raila Odinga's political moves. And so we saw a frustrated William Ruto threatening Gen Z protesters and their supposed sponsors. Listen to this.
Wanaendelea kusema wao ni faceless, wao ni formless, sijui wako nini. Mimi nimewaambia the country is much more important than any group of people. We must stand together as a nation, protect our nation, and make sure that Kenya is a democracy.
Tough talk, I was listening to Pluto Arab Kiro on another forum, and he was saying that, knowing Ruto very well for many years, his default setting, his default persona when he's cornered is to go back to his true colors, which is dictatorship. And you can see from this talk that he's actually threatening to clamp down really hard, using the full force of the law on peaceful demonstrators who are simply exercising their civic duty to protest and to express dissatisfaction with the government of the day. Under this government, lots of young Kenyans still continue to be abducted. Some are still missing, and their parents are undergoing a lot of distress trying to find their children. Some are found dead, floating in quarries. Young Kenyans exercising their democratic right of protest are continually exposed to live bullets from policemen. And we've not seen the president or the leadership of the security organs coming out and telling the policemen to exercise restraint. We continue to see goons who are sponsored by politicians who are affiliated with the president. We've seen videos of these goons working in cahoots with the police to frustrate the peaceful protest of Kenyans and to cause mayhem and damage property so that it can be used as a pretext to clamp down on peaceful protest. And so the president has lost all moral ground to lecture Kenyans about democracy and preserving our democracy because, I'm sorry, his actions speak louder than his words. And I found this very interesting from this clergyman who made complete nonsense of the claim from the government that the Gen Z protests are being sponsored. Listen.
The firing of the cabinet was hoodwinking people. And I think what the president has done, he has made people to be more angry. And probably he doesn't want people to leave the protests. He is refueling the protests. And even when he is asking who is really funding the Gen Z protest, I think he is the greatest funder.
Well captured there. These protests from day one have actually been funded and fueled by Ruto himself. From the word go, if he had withdrawn Finance Bill 2024, we could not have gotten to where we are as a country. But he chose to ignore the voice of the people as expressed in public participation. The MPs who should have stood with the people were bribed to toe the government line. And the young people who came out peacefully to protest on 19th June were dealt with firmly. In fact, Rex was killed on that day. And so the president lost every opportunity he had to calm down the disquiet from the masses. And so after 50 plus young Kenyans have lost their lives protesting for accountability and good governance, the call has morphed from reject Finance Bill 2024 to Ruto must go. That is the clarion call from the young people, and they are very clear. The hashtags are Ruto must go, total shutdown, Tukutane Tuesday, Occupy JKIA. That's the big one now. Young people are saying they are going to close all major roads leading to JKIA. Mombasa Road, Expressway, Outer Ring Road, Airport Road, all shut down on Tuesday, 23rd July. So it's clearly a luta continua, and some are not even waiting for the day. They have found new ways to protest. Watch this. Ruto must go. Ruto must go. This guy is creative, man. And it took about a second or two for people around there to understand what was going on. But they finally got it and they had a little laugh about it. So lots of creative ways to protest. Imagine if all Nairobians coordinated and maybe at around noon or 1, everyone just honks their horn like that. Ten, 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 ten. Ruto must go. That will be epic. That will be epic. So kudos to Gen Zs, millennials, and all Kenyans from all walks of life and ages who have realized that this is a special moment for Kenya. And we must fully use it to to implement meaningful change in public governance. Thank you for listening. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, and comment. I now leave you with these young people who are doing the Lord's work in church. God bless. Bye-bye.